What I decide is what to believe.
If we set out to provide a realist account of language, that is the idea that language refers to stuff out there either as a sentence or individual words pointing to things, it runs into all sorts of trouble. And the American analytic philosopher Hilary Putnam, at the end of the 20th century, after a lifetime working in this field, said that the project to describe the relationship between language and the world was, and I quote, a shambles. And I think he's right. I think it is a shambles. And in fact, it was a shambles from almost the outset.
Now, the fundamental question of how language works, the answer is it's very complicated. Hilary Putnam and Saul Kripke in the middle of the last century made progress, in my opinion, explaining how certain bits of language work. But I don't know that there's a closed theory or a complete theory of how language could work. So we should be aware of it. But I do think that we can use it to describe the world, and that some of those descriptions are true, and we can have overwhelming evidence that some of them are true. And sometimes we don't have the evidence, and so on. So you have to go on a case-by-case basis.
I think within a particular frame, there are things which we can think of as being true. You know, if you look at the London Underground map, it may not be anything like what it's like to be in the underground. It's a series of lines. But it's very good at getting you from one side of London to another if you're using the tube. It's not a description of reality. It's a useful tool to get something to happen. And there are constraints on the metaphors that we can use. I think in practice, it turns out that we can in fact support almost any metaphor that we use if we're prepared to go far enough in trying to account for why we should see it like that. But on a day-to-day basis, yeah, of course, we are constrained by the way that our other metaphors operate, by the other closures, as I would describe them, and that constrains what we can say. So that constrains what we take to be reality. But I do think that we want to focus on the bigger overall picture, because one thing I did notice from Tim is, of course, he didn't say, oh yeah, we have got a realist picture of reality. For a long time, realists argued that, well, they did. I've had those arguments. I've had an argument with John Searle, who was a leading analytic philosopher, who was very much, oh, no, there really is. There really is an account. But recently, not recently, last few decades, there's been less and less confidence that there really is this picture. Putnam was part of that story. But there's somehow a sense of, well, we can get by saying, well, we can describe some bits. But I think you need an overall story. You need to say what we think of the relationship here or not. Is language describing some ultimate stuff out there, or isn't it?
The one word I want people to pick up on a little bit is the word realist, because it keeps coming up, and I want to explain the way I use that term. So if somebody else wants to use it a different way, that's fine, just explain how. From my point of view, it doesn't even make sense to say a theory is realist. A theory will have postulates about what exists. Like Democritus is going to tell you, you want to know what exists? Atoms in the void. That's it. Is that a realist theory or non-realist? It's just a theory, because it makes the actual claims about what exists.
But is an atom in the void, is that a real thing?
Well,
that he's locating and defining?
Now let me just say what I mean by realist.
Yeah.
What I mean by realist is not what the theory says, it's your attitude toward the theory. The question is, do I have enough evidence in favor of this theory to seriously consider that it's right? Right? Do I have enough evidence to believe that Democritus was right, that all there is atoms in the void? No, we have lots of evidence that's wrong. You know, the Democritean picture, which is a very clear picture, isn't right. He just had these little shaped atoms that bounced against each other. That's not the way things work. So for me, even the term realist theory doesn't make any sense. Give me the theory. It might be kind of vague. You might have to explain it to me. You have to tell me in more detail what you're postulating and how it works. Second question, tell me why to believe your theory. Give me the evidence, give me the other considerations. If they're strong enough, then as a scientific realist, what I, as a scientific realist, believe is that sometimes the evidence is strong enough that it's rational to actually believe in the existence of things you can't directly observe, like atoms or DNA molecules.
I can go along exactly with Tim saying, well, we need to have some criteria by which we decide whether we proceed with an account of the world, whether we think this model is worth proceeding. I think we absolutely have to do that. And indeed, I think that one of the problems of the contemporary space, because the consequences of a recognition of perspective have led many people to be skeptical of key Enlightenment strategies of empiricism and rationalism, as if these are just supporters of a prejudicial authority. I think they have been sometimes used that in the past, but no, I think we have to double down on empiricism and rationalism. We have to look and see how our models work. So I'm totally in line with that, But the point at which I disagree with Tim is he said, we have to decide if they're right. And I said, wait a minute, that right is exactly the realism that you're saying we can't define. You want to say, no, we decide whether they're right. And I want to say, no, we don't decide whether they're right. We just decide whether this is a model we think is worth continuing with. And we should always adopt the position that every framework will fail when we look at it. One of the consequences of the account that I give of closure is every closure fails, because it's utterly different from the stuff out there. It's not that sort of thing at all. It's about like trying to say to a child, you've got your Lego pieces, build the sky. Well, you can't, can you? You can't build the sky out of Lego pieces. And that's the relationship, is a way, the metaphor I'm going to give you for language and the stuff out there. You can't do that. It's always going to fail. If you try and say, how does this Lego piece refer to some bit in the sky, it's always going to go wrong. And that's how it is. And that's what we discover with our theories, that they never deliver.
I certainly didn't want to say we decide what's true. I mean, I can't decide what's true, certainly not in physics. I can't, by anything I do, decide, yes, in fact, there are, quarks and gluons and stuff like that, right? That's up to the world. That's not up to me. What I decide is what to believe.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below. Or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.